I think we're recording. So, okay, hello everybody. My name is Haley Campbell. I am the project director at the Global Consortium on Climate and Health Education. It's a pleasure to welcome you to our first member webinar of 2020. So before we get started, I just want to ask everybody to please ask your questions in the chat throughout the presentations, and we'll have a brief Q&A at the end. So we have some very exciting presenters today who will be sharing climate change and health curriculum initiatives at their institution. So today we'll hear from Dr. Walter Leal, who's a professor of climate change management and health at the Hamburg University of Applied Sciences in Germany. And presenting together, we will have Dr. Kate McFarlane and Joey Brooke. Kate McFarlane is a pediatric doctor doing a fellowship in medical education in Edinburgh, and Joey Brooke is a final year medical student at the University of Edinburgh as well. So thank you so much to all the presenters for joining us today, and we all really look forward to your presentations. And with that, I will turn it over to Joey and Kate.
Hello there. Can everyone hear me? Hi, I'm Joey. So I'm Joey Brooke, final year medical student.
And I'm Kate McFarlane, and I'm a paediatric doctor currently doing a medical education fellowship in Edinburgh.
So we're going to talk you through our journey in sustainability, and I'm going to talk you through the first part, which was looking at how we turned an audit into the opportunity to redevelop part of our curriculum.
And then I'll talk a bit more about where we go from developing further steps and going a bit more into detail about what our vision will be for the future.
So obviously, given the audience that we're addressing, I think we don't need to explore so much the reasons why planetary health is an important thing to be studying. But I think what is important to stress is that this is a medical education issue. If we're in charge of educating future generations of doctors, then we need to be preparing them for such health challenges of the future and starting to involve them earlier and getting them to think about how they can stop these problems from happening before they have to learn how to treat the effects of it. So much of the work that Edinburgh was involved in was sparked by our part in this Planetary Health Report Card initiative. So for those who may have not come across it, this initiative was started by a group of US medical students who were inspired by the Racial Justice Report Card created by White Coats for Black Lives. And so the team just adapted the report card format to explore planetary health teaching instead. And since then, 2019, the project's grown across the globe. And in 2020, 21, I think it was, over 30 medical students in the UK were part of it. It has been a really important part and a very good reflective process with feedback each year from its participants to try and make sure that each year we're building and making the report card better. So I headed up a team in Edinburgh, and this is just a little slide to say thank you to my team who are really dedicated and did all this in their own spare time. And we looked through the report card and found that we had to assess 5 different areas. So curriculum, obviously, but also looking at the university in general. So looking at its interdisciplinary research on health and the environment, look at how it supported students to take lead in planetary health-led initiatives, looking at how it worked with the community and kind of maintained advocacy around the subject. And also it looked at the sustainability of the campus itself. So we divided up the work, and systematically we worked through gathering lots of information using digital materials and contacting people to try and get access to important documents. And the reason we were doing this was to collect the evidence we needed to justify the points that we were awarding for each question within the report card. And once we'd finally gathered all this together, we submitted our specific Edinburgh report to the central team, who used it to formulate the final report that was released in April 2021. In this report, Edinburgh came 18th globally, ninth in the UK, and we came just behind Aberdeen in Scotland, who took the first place, sadly. But what it did demonstrate is that there was plenty of room for change in Edinburgh. So with the help of my colleague, Dr. Conor Littler, we compiled an executive summary that was specific for Edinburgh and summarised how we'd performed in respect to other universities, and we recommended some actions to kind of improve education on sustainable healthcare and planetary health. So the main recommendations we came up with, they were to integrate sustainable healthcare teaching into the curriculum and embed it more consistently across the years. We suggested doing this by kind of looking at the already established areas of the curriculum. So for us, this could include cases in our problem-based learning sessions, how to take environmental history in our history taking sessions, but it also looked at how we could expand where there was relevant content to include sustainability teaching. So for example, looking at how to reduce anaesthetic gas use in our Year 6 anaesthetic teaching. And finally, the other area that we thought would be really important, but harder to do perhaps, is to empower and support our tutors and our academics who are the ones teaching us on this. Because it's obviously very hard and to try and talk about this when you don't necessarily feel confident in teaching it. So our audit led us to be invited to contribute to a new unit of that was being developed called Health, Medicine and the Environment, because we had a good overview of what the curriculum looked like due to the audit. So we helped to develop this triad format for the unit. And the first week looked at all the things that we'd found had been missed currently from our audit. So we addressed what was planetary health, what were planetary health boundaries, and tried to talk about things such as the inequalities of poor planetary health. In the second week, we looked at how healthcare systems were contributing to the problems we discussed in week 1. And then the final week, we would talk about how to change the healthcare systems to improve things for the better. So this is obviously just one simple structure, but we used the Centre for Sustainable Healthcare. They have constructed a list of learning objectives that have been taken on by the GMC, so our kind of who look over us and have developed the outcomes for graduates that we're meant to meet, just to make this a more standardized approach for the university. So just to take you through quickly what it looked a bit like of this unit, we used resources that were already available, looking through the Planetary Health Alliance and through the Centre for Sustainable Healthcare. And alongside these resources, we developed a series of mini videos to kind of anchor the module and give it a kind of streamlined feeling for the students. We try to keep engagement through different kind of ways of thinking. This is not a content that the content was not specifically assessed in a formal way. So to try and motivate and keep our students engaged, we developed this podcast idea, which would help develop non-technical skills by creating digestible forms of research. And the podcasts that the students have presented and made, the best of them are going to be chosen to be displayed on the Royal College of Physicians Edinburgh website. So undergraduate teaching is now going to help postgraduates. Finally, some accessibility is obviously a really important part. So we tried to make sure that all our videos were captioned and that lots of transcripts of the talks that we've had were available so that students could kind of get the most from the content. And of course, we had to do this all within COVID. So we took a blended learning approach, trying to develop a kind of offline element where we could have face-to-face interactions with tutorials, but also through Teams. We had a space where students can work online and still at work well, even when COVID rules were changing. So just some of the challenges before I finished. Obviously, for me, a problem or something to face was what did I think the impact of the unit would be? And I think it was quite a simple one when I really boiled down to it. I just wanted the students to come away from this unit feeling that they were aware that this was a problem. And if I could get them to think that way, then maybe this would lead to them caring a bit about it and maybe even lead to them feeling a bit more confident to raise this with colleagues in the future. We have two different streams of students who were doing this in their year 2. So there were healthcare professionals who were retraining, and there are the standard stream of students. And so they have different timetables and different times allocated. So it was a kind of a bit of a struggle to fit the two together. Obviously, the sustainability of the unit is important. This is my last year, and I needed this unit to be able to run independent of me. So in part, all the resources that we've created and found were to do this, and a part of the collaborative effort that I've had with the ongoing module lead. But also part of this will be trying to integrate sustainability teaching across the curriculum, so that learning isn't just dependent on one unit anymore. And finally, as we kind of illustrated in our executive summary, trying to give tutors the confidence to deliver sessions is really important. So we tried to facilitate this for our in-person tutorials by giving the tutors a time to meet with us and have discussions, raise concerns about the session they're about to deliver. So that was the unit that we created. And I'll pass on to Kate now, who'll talk a little bit through about what we plan.
Thanks, Joey. So my part is just to go through a bit about how we have kind of a continued vision for our sustainability teaching within the curriculum, both for medical undergraduates as well as furthering it into the postgraduate curriculum as well. So in terms of integrating, there's been a few key elements, one of which was the formation of the staff student curricula group, which was developed in last year in 2021 with the aim of engaging medical students to integrate sustainability and planetary health into their own learning. So students were selected according to their submitted manifestos based on their ideas for integrating sustainability and any climate crisis teaching into the curriculum. Two representatives were recruited from each year group from the MBCHB medical curriculum, and they work with directors of education fellows like myself, and year and course directors from the different MBCHB groups. And we thought that having students influencing their own curriculum aims to help with not just engagement and acceptability of the teaching, but also with the ongoing sustainability of the programme. One of the other key elements that builds from what Joey's just explained was to the sort of importance of the catch-up teaching. So there'd be a group of students that had those modules in year 2, but there's a lot of students that have already passed through year 2. So we thought that it would be really important to implement some catch-up teaching for the interim years. And then ongoing from that, the year 6 teaching that we aim to develop, which is specifically around sustainable quality improvement projects, because this is a group of students who will be imminently arriving on the wards as brand new doctors. And we chose this group because they will all be performing quality improvement projects and governance activity, which will influence the ongoing kind of governance practices of the trusts and hospitals that they'll be working in. So it would be pertinent to have sustainable practices within each and every one of those quality improvement projects. We go into that a bit further in the next slide. One of the other key elements is developing a special study component module, and that's named as the Future of Medicine. And although there's a lot of elements to the Future of Medicine special study component, one of them is about climate change and environmental challenges. And this is where students are encouraged to gather in groups, and they may seek their own topic and their own tutor. Or they may be allocated to spend 1 year on a project culminating in an online platform and a podcast or live event at the end of the year, talking about a particular challenge or issue. And many, surprisingly or unsurprisingly, as many students are very engaged, they chose climate-related activity as a sort of self-selected topic as a challenge that they would like to talk about. And this was specifically relevant to my paediatric input because much of it was to do with the impact of air pollution on children specifically. So moving on to the expanding and promoting, this was more specifically related to our our postgraduate community. And so I'll talk a bit about some of the projects we're developing to expand and promote the sustainable agenda for postgraduate doctors and, of course, into specialties. So the sustainable QI teaching is happening for the paediatric trainees and foundation doctors, and they're the doctors who are in the first 2 years post-graduation. And we hope to bring in the principles from the Centre for Sustainable Healthcare, which Joey mentioned. And we give credit and a lot of gratitude to this Centre for Sustainable Healthcare for many of our teaching materials. They use the ethos of empowering health professionals to embed sustainability into every QI project they do, be it a prescribing audit on intensive care or reducing bacteremias and unnecessary cannulations in the emergency department. And as an independent charity, this centre has been leading in the efforts to incorporate values of environmental sustainability into the healthcare sector through education since around 2008. And it particularly focuses on principles around prevention, patient empowerment, self-care and lean care pathways. So that's the values that we hope to embed into our curriculum as well. So we also, one of the other key foundation parts was going forward into the NHS Education for Scotland Medical Education Conference, and that's due to happen later this year. And we hope to kind of build together a bit more of a network of people through just talking to more people through these conferences and running workshops to gain people on board with our practices of sustainable QI through not just our own specialties, but further afield as well. So that leads me on to how we are empowering and supporting our different groups. So this is kind of to do with building the network. So through developing a network of interested trainers, we have supported one of the initiatives is the Greener General Practice Vision. And we recently hope to embark on the Greener Emergency Department project, which is trainee-led in 2022. And one of the other important parts is that we've recently kind of lobbied and also secured funding for a sustainability fellow post in our region in 2022, which is very much celebrated and ensures a longer term commitment to the cause. And this post will have a strategic role in accelerating transformation towards sustainable healthcare, and will include an education as well as a research element, and that's supported by the Medical Education Directorate. This may focus on a clinical specialty or on a sort of cross-cutting theme such as education, quality improvement, or on a specific topic such as single-use plastics. So moving on to the ongoing vision for where we like to take this forward. As you can see, there's 4 main pillars of the vision, and it's in no doubt that the biggest threat to health is climate change. So it should definitely be part of our medical student and postgraduate curriculum at all stages. And that's the main kind of ethos towards our vision. But more specifically, the future vision is to lobby the Royal Colleges to encourage doctors to show evidence of sustainable QI activities in their portfolios for including in annual appraisals. And alongside this, ensuring that climate health issues are prioritised in the foundation year curriculum as well as specialty curriculums. In Edinburgh specifically, there is development of postgraduate certificate modules in greener healthcare. And this will allow doctors and other health professionals to become better trained and more confident in developing teaching structures and developing and implementing greener healthcare generally. And we hope that that will then result in each specialty having a sustainability representative, so that they're responsible for integrating sustainable teaching into every session that's developed across the university. And these reps will be supported to encourage research and discussions, like at, for example, journal clubs featuring research onto the impact of climate change on health in their individual specialties. So I'll now hand back to Joey to complete our summary.
Yeah, so just in summary, we think that encouraging students to take part in audits of the curriculum from a stance that they're passionate about can really empower them to become involved in medical education on a general level. And students are also allies when it comes to helping develop curriculums, particularly in novel areas such as planetary health and sustainable healthcare, where traditional medical educators might not feel so confident. And finally, it's important to develop postgraduate teaching on this subject, as we want to continue the work that's been started at an undergraduate level. Thank you for listening to us.
Great, thank you so much, Joey and Kate. That was incredibly insightful, and I have a couple of questions, but I will ask them at the end. And we'll pass it right along to Dr. Walter Leal.
Many thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to be here. I'm very happy to have here so many, medical students. We need you. We need you guys, the next generation of people working in this very valuable area. Once again, thanks for the invite. I'm going to share with you my screen, the presentation about the work we do in Hamburg. Get the presentation, and then that should work nicely. Sometimes it does, not always does, but sometimes it does. I hope you can see the screen well. Splendid. Okay, so in the next sort of 18 minutes, I'll talk about the work we're doing in Hamburg in respect of climate change and health in the curriculum. And I'll present you an overview of some of the work we are undertaking here right now. Today, I am accompanied by my colleague, Daria Taza. She's part of our team. A bit about myself. My name is Walter. I have here the chair of planetary management and health at Hamburg, the first chair established in Germany back to 2004. There are a couple more in this country. I also wear another hat. So I also have the chair of environmental technology at the Manchester Metropolitan University in the UK. I also had here a research center which focuses on sustainability and climate change. I'm also active at the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. I've been part of the work group number 2, working on climate change adaptation, and the report for work group number 2 should be ready this summer. There are interesting findings coming from it. I also run, work sustainability, European School of Sustainability Science Research, and also a large network of universities who work on sustainability. And I have some publications, happy to be here. So I will basically outline what we do in Hamburg and the work we do on climate change, and present you a couple of projects that we are running right now, focusing on climate change in the curriculum. So we are University of Hamburg Life Science in Hamburg. We are the second largest university in the city of Hamburg. There are 5 universities. We are the second biggest one. We just celebrated 2 years ago our 50th anniversary. We are a member of a variety of networks. We have just over 17,000 students, lots of international students, some professors, scientific staff, and administration staff, as most universities do. We are structured around 4 faculties: Faculty of Life Sciences, which I belong to, Faculty of Economics, Informatics, and Design and Media. We have a variety of bachelor's and master's programs. Many of them are taught in English. And there are some of the networks we are attached with in Europe, but also very active in China. We have a very vibrant campus. And the research we do tackles a variety of issues: energy, sustainability, health and nutrition, mobility and transport, information, communication, media, and we have a great variety of research projects. We also have just over 120 doctoral students undertaking research in a variety of areas, including, of course, climate change and health. So that's the center which I run. So this center was established 15 years ago, and we do applied research, meaning that we try to not only look at the research on the theoretical perspective, but also the very pragmatic one. We call it action research. We undertake a variety of events. We were quite active before COVID-19 came. We had to stop our international events physically. We are, of course, doing a lot online. And we hope that there will be a world after COVID-19 where we can meet in person again. And we also undertake training of masters and doctoral students. We have many students from around the world doing some work with us on sustainability and on climate change. So these are the main topics we are working right now, sustainability as a whole, but also energy issues and climate change and health, nature conservation, and ecology. These matters, they are closely associated, and they are closely, let's say, linked in respect of their the roots and the impact, the problems these areas are experiencing right now. We have a variety of programs, Research Transfer Center, Center of Expertise with the University. We are very active in digital learning for sustainable development. We have a big program which the area is part of. We're also part of a large university network here in Europe called the Baltic University Network, involving a variety of Baltic Sea countries. And many projects undertaken on the ground. Just two examples. One was about climate change in Sika, in the beautiful island of Fiji. A study we undertook 3 years ago, try to identify how climate change links with the prevalence of such diseases, especially vector-borne diseases. As you are aware, dear colleagues, with global warming, with the increase in temperatures, we are more likely to have a greater incidence of vector-borne diseases. And Zika, malaria, chikungunya, yellow fever, these are all diseases whose intensity may increase due to a warming climate and increase in CO2 emissions. We also host in Hamburg quite an international program we call EARTH, the summer school, where students from health sciences, including some of you maybe, around the world, will come to Hamburg for 4 weeks to learn about climate change and health issues and how these things are interconnected. So this is something that I'd like to present right now, closing now to the topic of today's presentation, the climate change module and public health, called Klimagesund, which is the German terms for climate and health. Is recently, well, just about to complete the project. We just have an extension, and the idea is to really provide educational resources on climate change to support the training of health professionals. We have one problem, dear group, in the sense that even though climate issues are emerging as important issues in medical education, in the health profession as a whole, there is a shortage of materials which may allow us to teach about climate issues in the curriculum of these courses. Therefore, we proposed a project called Klimagesund, which tries to, well, has developed modules which may make it easier for lecturers, but also for students to handle climate issues as part of their curriculum. So these are here some essentials. We look at the issue of responses, the health protection, but also health promotion. We look at issues linked with surveillance and early warning strategies to inform the public what forthcoming problems due to a changing climate, and information, communication, awareness raising in climate change. As you can see here on the right-hand side of the slide, we are following the EPOS, let's say, philosophy, looking also at the section of public health operations. So the way it works is that we have a online tool prepared of the project as part of the project. This is complemented by text and by real content. And to make it interesting, lively, we have a combination of audio and videos as part of the project. And to make sure that we really truly involve the students, we have exercise and also quizzes, which make the learning more interesting. The idea is to use the transformative potential of blended learning so that we have these modules available and they can be used in a flexible way. They can be used in full, they can be used as units, they can be used as single lectures. There's a wide range of flexibility as far as these modules is concerned. This is what we want to achieve with it, being understanding about climate change. I strongly believe that those in the medical profession, especially and not only medical students, should be climate literate. Climate literate, meaning you know what climate change is, you know the various impacts climate change has on health, so you are better prepared to understand the impacts and also better handle them. We can expect, due to global warming, an increase in the frequency of the so-called extreme events, which include, on the one hand, floods, but also heat waves. And these two elements have an impact, of course, on our health. We have here statistics from Germany, but certainly also from other countries show that in the summer months, more and more people are suffering from heat strokes because the temperature is increasing and affect especially, and not only the elderly, people who are vulnerable, and also young children. So we are trying to raise a wide awareness about what climate change is, what it means to people. We also want people to understand there's a major challenge. Climate change, without any exaggeration, is one of the major challenges of modern times. And it's really a question of showing people that it's a challenge, which has an influence in the health science, therefore we should know about it, and then make the professionals more comfortable to tackle climate change or to take into account during the work we do. And because the work we're doing is very much action-oriented learning, you learn by doing, you learn by seeing and experiencing climate change. That makes the module so useful. So we are aimed at helping lecturers, so this is our target group, so that they can feel themselves comfortable and teach about climate change and can pass the information on to the students in a very interesting way. And the ultimate aim is, by means of this program, really foster public health by giving the means to make our new students more aware of climate change. This, I'm afraid, is in German. We are now applying for funding for that is information in English to give a taste of the web-based tool. Everything is online. It's very interesting, very dynamic, with maps, illustrations, which make the teaching very interesting. We quite often hear from the students, oh, this module is now coming to an end. You would like to have more of it. Therefore, good feedback. So in essence, we are talking about direct impact, which mostly from extreme weather events. We also look at the different indirect impacts of climate change as it affects environmental changes, for example, water shortages, and how the population is impacted by it. Because as I mentioned before, the problem is becoming more intensive, therefore more people will be affected from it. It would be a mistake, dear group, to believe that we live in the Northern Hemisphere, we live in rich countries, that we are immune to climate change. We are not. We are not immune to climate change at all. We are actually very vulnerable, as you can see from the increase in frequency of extreme events, therefore should be prepared to handle it. It's not an issue which is considered people living in Africa or Asia. It's an issue also for the Northern Hemisphere, for North America, and also for Europe. A second project we'd like to introduce you today, quite briefly, is called Climate Robust Climate. It's a teaching module on climate change for engineering students. Of course, our focus today is on the health sciences, but we do have things like rescue engineering or emergency services who rely on the need for information on climate change. We are now trying to use a similar approach with Climate Zoned and make this target group, people working in rescue services, aware about climate change and how they should be prepared to handle an increasing incidence of extreme events. So we're developing also tools, online tools with critical infrastructures, emergency services, toolbox, and try to engage those people, engineers as well, in this climate change debate. It's been quite apart from it. Now I want them to be more central to the work they do. And right now we are starting a new project called Fit for Health. It's about climate knowledge and strategies to foster climate action in the healthcare sector. Daria Teza is managing this project. Here we are looking at health professions. We have a variety of health professionals, apart from medicine. We have physiotherapists, we have logopedists, we have midwives. The variety of professions in the healthcare, with Fit for Health, we want to make these professions aware about climate change, what it means to them, so they can take this knowledge into account in their profession. We just started this project. We'll start very soon, actually, in April, just to give you a taste of things to come. And finally, we're also very active in publishing the work we do. I feel there's a big problem in the sense that much knowledge is available about climate change and health, but little of this knowledge is actually documented, and even less is disseminated. So we try to, in our center, document the good work happening on climate change and health and promoting it. One activity is this book about climate change and health, about improving resiliency and reducing risks, where I'm preparing right now the next book, which is called The Handbook of Human Planetary Health. This book is near completion, and I cannot resist saying something, Haley. Those attending today's meeting who feel they might have some material on climate change and health, please let me know, so we might consider have your input in this book. It's quite well advanced, but I cannot resist invite you to contribute in case you'd like to. This is work in progress, should be ready this year. We also published the work we do in journals. We did a study, for example, on climate change and health in Africa. We also did one of various studies on the impact of COVID-19 at the university level. The issue of plastic was mentioned today, I think, by Joey and by Kate. We also work on the issue of plastics and how plastics links with our health. Plastic debris in the Pacific Islands. I was very sad to find out how much plastic is affecting the environment and human health on the Pacific Island states. And this paper came out last week about climate change and zoonosis, reviewing the concepts. And our final paper now coming up is about a matter quite often ignored, namely climate change and mental health. Dear colleagues, I cannot overemphasize how important this topic is, because after a flood, after a dry spell, properties are damaged, property are lost, and that poses a huge, huge burden in people's mental health. So we're finalizing a paper right now, is in the first review round, where we try to analyze the link between climate change and mental health in the Pacific region, a highly vulnerable region. That's us in our team. Again, that is with us today. There are many other colleagues who are not able to be here today. And I want to shut up and thank you for listening to me. I hope I was on time.
Yes, that was perfect. Thank you so much. I've just posted the final call for papers in the chat for the Human Health and Planetary Health handbook that Walter just mentioned. Thank you all for your presentations today. I think just doing some reflecting back, I think all of your work has sort of identified that there's a deficit of health professionals that Walter called as climate literate. And I think both of your curriculum initiatives are just absolutely excellent examples of how programs can take transformative action to close this knowledge gap. So just thank you so much for sharing your expertise today. I think we have a couple of questions to start. Looks like from Natasha Sood in the chat. She says, Joey and team, impressed by your thoroughness of your process. Are you working to implement this process of turning the results of the Planetary Health Report Card into action at other institutions in your area?
Gosh, if we could get it more like into the university, I'd be happy with that, let alone if I could get it anywhere else. But I mean, I suppose the argument I would say institutions aren't just university. We've got at least 3 major hospitals in Edinburgh and some of the kind of smaller district hospitals around us where we go out to placements. So if we could also get those institutions involved and on board with this, then I think that would be a really positive move forward. And I think having someone like Kate, and our future sustainability fellow would be will really help us to make that kind of leap forward. Kate, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking the same, that the great thing about medical students is that, and junior doctors, that they're quite transient group that kind of move around a lot of different institutions, both from the health perspective, but also the universities as well. So they're a great vehicle to be able to get the word out. But I think in the wider area, I mean, it's really interesting because the planetary health card is just a great sort of framework that I've even used similar principles to kind of look at departments, like even within the education directorate and in the emergency department, like some of the structure of the framework is really useful to just go about thinking, how could I change a particular department, how to get people on board, what's the you know, when it can seem a bit overwhelming at times, like what an individual or a group can do, but having a framework and a structure of, well, what are we currently doing versus what can we do in the future, it really helps for departments as well. But it also made me think other universities around Scotland implementing it, and I know obviously Aberdeen did, and but I'm not sure about the other ones, especially in the north of England as well. So it's probably worth connecting up and networking with the other universities as well. So yeah, really good point.
Just to say, I've seen now some of the people on the call, and one of them is Carly Hampshire, who was one of the students who kind of started the Planetary Health report cards. So just to say thank you to her, because this all kind of started, and actually what you raise is a good opportunity. Maybe we need to build on what we've made with connections and talk to our students in the other universities and see how they're going. I'll be interested to see what the new report card comes out with this year.
Also, I think, thank you, Kate and Joey. I think what you can also do, you saw our program, Climate Zone. I was thinking of maybe approaching the Scottish office and requesting them a grant to get this project, materials translated into English, and then get used into your place. What do you guys think about it?
Sounds amazing.
Okay, so since Haley, we are networking, see?
Yeah.
But I'll come back to you, Joey and Kay, to discuss the idea, approaching them, request a grant for their material translator, that get them, of course, adjusted, so that Scottish medical students can be able to use the material for this part of the education. Today, somebody asking me, should climate change be mandatory in medical education? So, but if you say the word mandatory, it sounds very negative. My answer was, well, what you can do is to show to medical schools that they cannot afford ignoring climate issues if they want to train the next generation of medical doctors. That's probably a more positive way of putting forward, right? Not mandatory, but showing that it is necessary to need it, please add it to your curriculum.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you walking through all of your entire process. Just a quick follow-up question. As you have, all three of you, as you have created these very comprehensive toolboxes, modules, videos, they're very diverse. How have you gotten buy-in from faculty as you've gone to implement your resources?
Sorry, Walter. Slowly, painfully. It's been a long process, and I think I've been fortunate that I've had people on the way that have been very interested in this, and it's definitely been a kind of stones that have gradually kind of caused an avalanche. This has been at least 3 years that I've been like interested and passionate about this, and actually I would say that the report card definitely helped. And a lot of things that kind of came along the way were, Kate joining at this particular time, doing a few talks like this to other educators in Edinburgh, and kind of just, finding that there's a bit more momentum, and actually there's a bit more of a discussion. Actually, I also think the talks in Glasgow helped a lot for us as well, because obviously it was a local issue for a global problem. So that helped.
I fully endorse Joy's painful and slow. people are very busy, the other course, the academic staff is very busy, they have other priorities. So to get them to involve was really beginning difficult. But now they see the final product now, they are a little bit more open. And they work through the area. We also promote it at other universities and give them some, let's say, encouragement to use our materials. Do you want to comment on that area? How the universities are using our materials?
Yeah, totally. So they are really interested, and like Joey told, we also have met a lot of people who are really interested in materials and contents about climate change and health. But the problem was from the deans, so that they couldn't integrate all the contents what we had created in their module. So they need another module in for public health or health scientists, and this was the problem at the universities. But so let's see if they started to give also lecture on evenings or also on Saturdays, so that the students can have the lecture on Saturday, maybe to get some more credit points for the module, for a new module, so that they can so that the lecturers can talk to the deans like, hey, here you can see the students are also interested in the module, so maybe we can implement the module, a new module for the public health students and also for the health sciences. But yeah, so this is something where the universities have to discuss at the first point.
I think we have to bear in mind that climate change and health, it is compete with other topics. Big competition for space, for the curriculum, for the timetable, and find a way to integrate, I think, one of the keys for succeeding.
Yeah, just to say on that, I completely agree. And I think actually trying to get that across to, academics, our teachers and stuff is really tricky. I'm trying to be like, actually, if you spent 5 minutes in your talk like mentioning this, that's a very small amount of time. People think that you need to make a whole unit, a whole module, a whole thing on it. And I think that is important in some respects, but actually it would be easier just to be talking about this for 5 minutes in every lecture rather than, 3 hours, for example.
Completely agree. I think the integration into the existing curricular structure is so important. Thank you all for sharing your wisdom. I'll hand it back to Haley.
Yeah, thanks, Natasha. I just have a quick question for Dr. Leo, and I'm not so sure you'll have an answer, but you mentioned Hamburg has multiple branches internationally, and I was just wondering if the program had utilized its sort of global network in any way to inform or strengthen the content of the climate and health curriculum or module that you had mentioned.
Thank you. Notice an area we have to upscale. That's why we joined also your network to be able to scale it up. The work we do right now is very much centered on the connection we have, our partner relationships. But because the program is now becoming stronger, we will certainly, upscale and also reach out to other regions. We were a little bit constrained by the fact that a project like Climate Zone, a German-funded project, has to be done in German, which is awful. So we're trying now to get the resources more, targeted towards also producing works in English, which makes it easier to use elsewhere. The work in German is something which is very difficult. It's only a nationwide thing. I want to work in English to make it this work more relevant to other people.
Yeah, no, that completely makes sense. I think you have to be able to adjust the barriers to be able to figure out your next steps in terms of upscaling. But yeah, thank you. I also was curious about the student response to the climate and health module. I think I had missed how many years that it's been going on so far for Hamburg.
Okay, fine. Can you give an idea, Daria?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you, Haley.
Yes, Haley is asking about the number of students we've been able to reach so far.
Yeah, what's been the student response or reaction to the module so far?
So we gave lecture for 8 universities so far, And
okay.
yeah, so I think you can imagine, so they have modules it starts from 15 students from the private universities until 80 students. So one we will give also for nurses on Monday, and this will be, so we will lead it, and it's from the Finnish university. So that's like, we try also to do all the lectures, also like give lectures international. So like with Finnish students, we will start on Monday and see if we have any chances with the Klimagesund project, like Professor Leal says. So the next target will be to create the materials, the contents in English, so that also international students, or also students in Germany who are doing their international master, can use the contents and also the lectures. And yeah, so far we had up to 200, 250 students in the lectures we gave. So yeah, and the responses, they were really happy about the project, because since the Health for Future groups here in Germany starts with the demonstrations about climate change and health, not only the lecturers, most of all the students are really interested in the topic, and they will learn more. And yeah, these were the students from public health and health scientists. And yeah, so we reached so far 230 till 250 students. Yeah.
Wow, thank you for sharing. That's incredible to hear about the enrollment, especially internationally. Is pretty noteworthy. I just wanted to take this time to see if anybody wanted to unmute and ask any questions to any of the panelists. Give a couple seconds. I know it's a little scary sometimes.
Maybe could ask dear Haley, what the experiences are, from Christina or from Catherine. What are the experiences so far? I mean, have they had this module, or have they had any module at all on climate change and health during their education? That'd be interesting to know. So maybe here the medical students could tell us their experience so far. So have you guys had the opportunity to have climate change as a topic during your education as medical students?
Joey's shaking her head.
I had like one lecture that briefly mentioned green space, and that's been it.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm sort of 8 years now, no, 9, 10 years postgraduate, and certainly a decade, it's really showing my age, but a decade ago, there was nothing included in our curriculum. So it's come a long way. But I think, yeah, thinking about almost going back to the previous question about the evidence for how students are engaged. One of the ways that I thought was really useful to work out how people were engaging with it was with the special study components, where students could actually choose which module they'd like to study over a whole year. And there was huge oversubscription towards the climate change, basically voluntary climate change module. And they had to, in the end, they couldn't find enough tutors. So it was mainly the students were really involved, but the tutors were doing other things. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of good engagement. But I think it does kind of highlight the point that a lot of, well, myself included, are kind of self-taught people and by no means experts, but just kind of developing my own skills over time, having not really been educated as an undergrad particularly. But that in itself is a good learning experience. So I'm happy to continue that.
I feel like a similarity or sort of like overarching theme I've noticed since I've joined the consortium is that the appetite to learn about climate and health is really there from students. Like the desire is there, but I think particularly with medical education is it's just so gridlocked, and there's almost no room for wiggle, like modifications or changes at all to the curriculum. I don't know if either Joey or Kate could speak to that a little bit. I come from a public health background, so it's very interesting for me to sort of learn about this this integration process.
Yeah, no, curriculum space is tight and you're always kind of battling, and that's one of the big things that you have to try and justify against. Why should we do less anatomy, more climate health? And I guess that was my point earlier about we don't want you to do more, we just want you to mention it more and kind of build this into it a bit more than having specific time allocated to it. But just to say, when I saw the book that you had, Walter, I was like, oh, definitely read through that one before. So sometimes just making students aware that those resources are out there is a good thing to do.
Well, all right. Well, if there are no more questions from the audience, oh, we're getting some. Catherine is a faculty member. She said that there was a health policy selective, so she had to elect to take it, where they discussed environmental impacts of healthcare. So it was not a foundational course by any means. It seems everyone is sort of taking it upon themselves, sort of like Kate mentioned, to educate themselves about climate or planetary health.
I'd be interested to know, Catherine, as a faculty member, is there any way that we incentivize faculty members to teach this? This is something that is included in the report card, which is like, is there an incentive process for your faculty to teach on this? So I never found anyone in Edinburgh, so.
Maybe you can comment on the way in Germany.
Talk about it, but I think the way that we're approaching it is that we want to make sure that it's not additional work for the faculty. So if they're already talking about asthma, they have a slide about pollution, just to identify it as a climate change or environmental health, like planetary health topic, as opposed to, giving them a new slide or something that they have to present that's like de novo that they have to generate. So lowering the barrier for participation, I guess, is what we've been trying to do. I don't know if other people have other thoughts.
I'm at Ohio State, and one piece of advice I have is my training is actually in environmental public health. So for me, this is incredibly exciting and something where I did receive a lot of training in it, but I just don't have the clinical pearls of wisdom. And so one piece of advice, since many of these large universities also have public health programs, is reaching out to your public health faculty, who would be more than excited to talk about the clinical implications rather than just, publishing papers is amazing to disseminate information, but it's really exciting to talk to students who have the opportunity to practice it in a clerkship that following week. So like taking an environmental exposure history is exciting to talk to grad students about, but it's even more fulfilling to talk to medical students because then they do it in clinic that week.
Yeah, I was going to mention the experience we have here. 5 years ago, the topic was really seldom approached, but a small NGO was created called CLUG, which is the environmental climate change and health network. It has grown exponentially, has now nearly 200 members, many of which are faculty. So people get themselves organized around this network, they facilitate information, they provide information on new developments, they call for projects. They're now very professional now, with professional staff, with an office. And since this network was established then, many of the people in Germany are joining now, this climate change and health cause. It's working very well. I think the peer pressure is mobilizing people. Nobody wants to be out of it. Oh, I want to join it. So they want to keep an eye on what things are going. That's a good thing.
All right, well, thank you everybody for such a productive discussion, for our speakers for sharing their wisdom about their curriculum planning today. I see there's been some networks built here today. So with that, I thank you all for attending, and I hope to see you at future Global Consortium events in the future.
Thank you for organizing the radio. It was appreciated. Joy,
Thank you.
I
It's a
sent you a
pleasure.
note. If you drop me a note, I can contact about this project proposal, right? Born today. So drop me one quick. Thank you again, Head, for organizing. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
All right. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Everyone.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.